Dennis, you're in Atlanta, Georgia. Padres are 3-4. There's been some good things. There's been some not so good things thus far. Anything that you see that you would say, is a potential cause for concern for the Padres here, just 7 games into the season, as silly as that question might sound?
The bullpen is obviously the big one. I think everyone's been talking about. I think Bob Belvin has kind of been hammering this point home past couple of days. That it seems like every day they have one or two guys unavailable in the bullpen and a 7-man bullpen with its 6-man rotations. So that's obviously not ideal. And that was even the case yesterday, coming off an off day. They got into Atlanta, the night before, and then Luis Garcia and Brent Honeywell were both unavailable, so they had to kind of try to stretch things a little thin last night, and obviously did not work out for them. But the bullpen's obviously not been great. And then you look at what Juan Soto is doing. Obviously, there's a ton of attention on him. This being a big year for him, not really a contract year, but in a sense, maybe it is because the guy turned down $440 million last year, and everyone's waiting to see how he's going to respond to having a full season with the Padres. And so far, the defense has obviously not been great. The base running's been a little iffy, and then at the plate, he's not hitting yet. And I know, like you said, it's 7 games, too early to panic. But when you turn down $440 million, it's just naturally going to be a harsher spotlight on you. So very interesting to see what he does, from here with the schedule they have coming up. 17 games in 17 days coming up. Assuming the rain doesn't, wipe one of these out. But, that'll just lead to a doubleheader somewhere, maybe this weekend. And the Padres really need to get this pitching staff in order, and they need to get Juan Soto going.
Dennis, let's circle back to the bullpen here for a second. Everybody loved and appreciated what it was, and recognized that the idea of a 6-man rotation last year was part of the Padres' success story. This year, though, it's been a little bit different. Has there been any consideration given perhaps to expanding the bullpen? Maybe the 6-man thing isn't as good this year as it might have been last year, or that's it full systems go, like, this worked for us, we believe in this, we'll just deal with it even if it means a couple lumps.
There already has been consideration, even though it's very early. If you look at the schedule they have, like I said, 18 games in 18 days, and then they have a bunch of off days in a relatively short period of time. So Bob Belvin has already said that he doesn't necessarily see them sticking with a 6-man once they get to all those off days, because the guys, first of all, just don't like really sitting around for a week before they pitch, starters, that is. So naturally, that leaves the question of, who do you move from the rotation to the bullpen? Nick Martinez was arguably their most versatile, at times most effective reliever after them moving him out of the rotation last season. Joe Musgrove is going to be back at some point. They're hoping mid-April. Last night's start in El Paso didn't seem to go, terribly well. So it probably need at least one more, but, he's not that far away ostensibly. And then, Seth Lugo obviously has bullpen experience as well. So there's going to be some tough questions and maybe some tough decisions for the Padres to make. But I would think, Martinez moving back to the bullpen, at least temporarily, might be on the table. Ryan Weathers, obviously, when Joe Musgrove comes back, he might get sent down or moved to the bullpen. So they're going to have some interesting decisions to make. But right now, they have to consider them, because this roster construction right now is not ideal, and it's leading to some early losses. And all losses count no matter where they are in the season. I know the Padres, played their best baseball at the end of last season, but you can't just bank on that happening. So they have to consider all options on the table. And right now, that might mean moving, one of these starters to the bullpen.
Based on what was said last year with Nick Martinez, boy, that would be an interesting conversation. If you bring Nick into the office and say, might need you to do something else for a little while, Nick.
Yeah, it wouldn't be an easy conversation. He's a team player. He's also just recently signed a very lucrative contract that has incentives for both starting and relieving, but especially for starting games. And, every competitor wants to start games. And, so far he's proven to be a serviceable option in the rotation. They need those innings too, because he threw 7 innings the second game of the season after Blake Snell went just 4 1/3 on opening day. And that was a huge help for the rotation. So that would be very tough. Maybe they go in another direction and ask someone else to move to the bullpen, but it still might be like multiple starters. They might have to have that talk with. And maybe it involves one of these IL situations where you put a guy who's not really that hurt on the IL. Don't tell the commissioner's office that, but they have some things to figure out because it's getting pretty crowded in the rotation. Not to say that their rotation is overflowing with options right now, but the bullpen clearly needs much more help in the rotation right now.
All right, Dennis Lind of The Athletic is joining us. You mentioned there were a couple of relievers who weren't available last night following an off day. What's that about?
Well, Brent Honeywell pitched 2 days in a row before the off day. He just made his Padres debut that first night, and then they kind of had to throw him in there again in an emergency the second day. So he's a guy they don't want to push too hard, especially because he's just getting back to the majors with them. Not since 2021 had he been in the majors, and he's had 4 arm surgeries, and he is kind of a long reliever right now. But with an arm like that, the injury history he has, they want to push him too hard. And Luis Garcia had pitched pretty much every other day, before yesterday, but each time he'd been pitching 20 plus pitches per outing, and he's one of their key back end relievers. And same thing, they don't want to push him too hard early in the season, so they had to turn to guys like Domingo Tapia and Steven Wilson, ask for more than 3 outs from both of them, and that's not necessarily something they want to do on the regular with both guys. And Domingo Tapia is kind of like Brent Honeywell; he's just trying to reestablish himself in the majors, even though he's older. But it's a situation now where they're looking at both those guys, Tapia and Steven Wilson, being down tonight, and possibly Nabil Crismatt too, although that might be more performance related because his first 3 outings have been kind of disastrous. But they're maybe looking at a 4-man bullpen tonight, and Josh Hader hasn't gotten in there much, but as we've seen over the past few years, even before he became a Padre, he's not really a guy who's going to give you more than 3 outs, except in very rare occasions like the playoffs. So they're going to have to get a really long start from Nick Martinez tonight, and maybe he's going to have to wear it a little bit if things don't go well.
Dennis Lind of The Athletic. The Snell stuff is mostly self-explanatory at this point. I think, everybody can do the math. Everybody knows that on average, he is good for slightly less than 5 innings per start. Obviously, the manager knows this. The managers talked about this. And I wonder, do you do anything different? Do they do anything different, Dennis, on the days that Blake Snell starts? When they know that it's more likely than not that he's going to give you 4, maybe 5 every once in a while. He pitches up to his capabilities. He can give you 6, give you 7. But is there anything different about game day preparation on the days that Blake Snell pitches, just given who he is? Because, the idea that we're going to wait for Blake Snell to somehow just turn into a guy that goes deeper into these games and can give you 190, 200 innings like a Joe Musgrove, like a Yu Darvish, that's not happening, right? Like, it's just not going to happen. That's the reality. So do they plan ahead for the days that Snell pitches, knowing that they probably have to go to the bullpen in the 5th, 6th innings most times?
I mean, with the state of the bullpen right now, I don't think you can just save a couple guys a couple days in advance, just knowing that Blake Snell, you might need to use those guys behind him. But yeah, I think, if this keeps up, and obviously he has a history of, not being good in the first halves of seasons and not going deep into games in the first halves of seasons, it's something, they do have to consider. Do you possibly hold someone back, Brent Honeywell back, someone to go a little bit longer in the bullpen right now for the next time Blake Snell starts? Or do you just kind of just throw him out there next time with I mean Snell, that is, and say, hey, you're going to wear it if you don't make it through the start. Okay, you're just going to have to throw a lot more pitches. But he's not really the kind of guy who's also used to doing that, because you see what happened when he tried to be a little more efficient toward the end last night, but he just kept throwing balls. So that's something that's maybe not going to magically change all of a sudden, even if he's under the knife and knowing that he has to, or under the gun, I should say, and knowing he has to provide more innings than he's usually accustomed to. But I think with the bullpen right now, they don't really have the luxury of saying we're going to hold a couple guys back, because chances are they need these guys every other day or every day right now, and that's something that has to come into question when you look at the roster construction and maybe flipping some new guys in there. And that also brings up the question of what do you do with guys like Crismatt and Honeywell, who are out of minor league options? Do you want to risk losing one of them this early in the season? So that's where the Padres are. It's not a great place to be, but maybe if Musgrove comes back and mid-April and Robert Suarez comes back and say May, maybe they'll be in a much better place then.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And the good news is even the results off to the side that Musgrove threw last night. So the plan is for him to continue to operate there and work in different rehab assignments wherever the minor league affiliate might be.
Well, before last night, I think the general thinking was, tonight and then one more rehab outing with AAA El Paso. Maybe we'll get him back against the Brewers next weekend or so. But we'll have to see what Bob Elvin says later today about what kind of reports they got from that. They're obviously going to be cautious with that toe and knowing that they need him for a long season because even though there's so much angst and hand wringing already, I think justifiably so in some aspects over these early results, it is a very long season and they definitely need Joe Musgrove. So they're going to be careful there. But I would assume he needs at least one more rehab outing, if not two, based on just the numbers last night. So we'll have to see on that.
Hey, congrats. The Jake Cronenworth contract broke that story last Friday. Reading up on that, sounds like it's something they talked about a little bit in the past and it came to fruition this past week. Who's next? Who do you think could be next up on the target list?
Well, we should, while we're here, we should wish happy birthday to Josh Hader. I think he's 29 today. Maybe the Padres have a present for him somewhere in the making. But I think he's a candidate. Juan Soto obviously gets talked about a lot, but so far, he's getting to a point. I know it's early again, but he's getting to a point where he needs to show the Padres a little more if they're gonna take the plunge on him with a huge monster, possibly record-setting contract. But I can say with confidence that's nowhere close right now, and who knows if that would ever become much of a conversation before he potentially hits free agency after 2024. Just the way things are going right now, and knowing who his agent Scott Boras is. But then if you're looking at other guys, I think Snell is obviously someone who really needs to prove some things even before he can get just get a decent contract for free agency. I think he'll do fine for himself there. But this is his last year in arbitration, or under his I should say under his previous contract, and right now he's not showing himself to be a reliable contributor. So it's very kind of far out that he would be under consideration for an extension. But I think Josh Hader does have a chance. They did, spend several years kind of coveting him before they finally landed him. And he's really, really good at the back of the bullpen. You just need to get there somehow first. So I don't think it's a massive priority right now. I think right now they're more worried about how they get this bullpen and this pitching staff in order.
Dennis, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Safe travels.
Thanks, Darren.
Cool. That was good.